Well, good afternoon. Thanks for spending the next 30 minutes with me, and we'll talk about the strategic alliance we have between Google Cloud and Intel, and hopefully how this can benefit customers like yourselves, as well as partners, and how we onboard them. So with that, I'll just jump in. So what I want to do over the next 30 minutes or so was talk about the exciting opportunity that all of us have in front of us. Also talk about what this strategic alliance between Google Cloud and Intel is all about. And then I'd also like to jump into some of the solution pillars we have for the alliance. And so how can you take advantage of the innovations that Intel and Google Cloud are driving together? And then also get into specific benefits. How can you take advantage? Because I get the question, great, you have an alliance. How can this help me from an end customer perspective? So we'll talk briefly about that. And then we'll wrap up with a quick summary. So with that said, I'd like to just talk about the market opportunity. Everybody knows that cloud services is really exploding. And there's several things that are driving that explosion in cloud services. So the first big trend is digital retail. If you look at the next 5 years, the number of shoppers going online to do their e-commerce is increasing. And it's actually a $6.5 trillion business over the next 5 years. And so if you look at all the retail transactions, 20% of those transactions are on e-commerce. But that number is only going to keep growing over time. So that's one big trend. A second is digital advertising. So if you look at all our usages, we go online to consume news, we go online to play games, we go online to watch videos. And so a lot of the digital advertising, 2/3 of that is driven by mobile. And that's really a dominant factor in terms of the driving trend. The third big one is digital video and media. A lot of content more recently has been created online for consumption online. So if you look at aggregate all these three trends, they're really driving an explosion of cloud services. I think what's important, though, is I've never seen, if I look back in the last 10 or 20 years, the amount of disruption that's happening, it's one thing, but at the rate at which it's happening is even amazing. So we're seeing industry after industry being disrupted. And in fact, even banking, which is a more traditional industry, is being disrupted because of cloud services. This is some just interesting stats. We had Logic Monitor do a survey, and we found that when they surveyed CIOs and asked them, what is the biggest barrier to innovation? The CIOs basically were saying it's legacy infrastructure. And if you look at the growth rates between cloud services or cloud service providers versus your enterprises, enterprises are growing at single digit, whereas cloud service providers are growing at double digits. So certainly something that's going on here is how do you transform your infrastructure? Now, the same survey was done also with IT professionals. And the question that was asked was, what is it going to take to drive the business transformation? So there were several factors that were called out. The first being the adoption of AI. And that's going to really accelerate business transformation, which is why Google is focused on it, Intel is focused on it, and we're trying to drive broader adoption of AI and machine learning. Another factor is that 83% of the enterprises plan to move to cloud. So that's a pretty significant number. And as well as what they're saying is, of the people polled, 41% were saying that they want to move to public cloud. So there's a lot of factors that are causing the transformation in terms of enterprises. And so if you look at businesses that are large or small, they're really trying to reimagine how their business can work for their customers. And so they're looking for scalability, flexibility, and agility. So with that said, I'll transition to sort of the relationship between Intel and Google Cloud. We actually have had a very broad and deep engineering relationship between our two companies over the last 15 years. But more recently, I would say going back to 2016, we really felt that it was important that these two large companies came together as we wanted to help enable the cloud business. And so the CEO at that time was Diane Green. We actually architected an alliance, and we actually announced the alliance in Q4 of 2016. And really the principal reason we did this alliance was to make it easy for end customers to do business with these two companies. And so the alliance was really constructed on two major pillars. The first was around technology innovation, and then the second pillar was around business acceleration. So it was critical that we co-innovated together, but more importantly, how do you then bring that co-innovation to end customers and make sure that they can take advantage of that innovation? And so we have a variety of different programs that you can take advantage of. But let me just speak to the innovation. So we decided to focus on a couple of areas. Number one, Intel is obviously known for its CPU technologies, and so there was keen interest on Google Cloud side to want to collaborate on our latest CPU technology. A second was around hybrid and multi-cloud. Everybody seems to want to go hybrid these days. In addition, we also focused on looking at IoT as well as AI and machine learning. So those were the areas that you'll see collaboration between our companies. And then in terms of the business acceleration, we wanted to make sure that we made it easy for you to do business with the alliance teams. So we have programs in place like the Global Sales Proof of Concept program, and that's available to all customers. In addition, we have joint marketing initiatives that you can have our partners take advantage of. So we work very closely with the partners in the ecosystem that then work with end customers to go enable complex problems. And we also have thought leadership efforts in place to drive the industry forward in areas like AI, as well as in other areas like hybrid, which is becoming more and more critical. So I guess ask the question, so great, you have this alliance in place, and what kind of innovation have you brought to the marketplace? And so I just wanted to kind of quickly talk through some of the things we've done. In fact, Google Cloud has made a commitment to be the first cloud service provider to really embrace all the Intel technologies. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. So they were the first in 2017 to take advantage of our Skylake processor, what we call the Intel Xeon Scalable processor. And a lot of the services that you see on GCP, especially for compute, like GCE, GKE, Dataproc, Dataflow, and Zinc, were enabled on the Intel CPU from Skylake. The other example is in 2019, we announced the second generation Intel Xeon Scalable processor, codenamed Cascade Lake. And so if you look at the recent announcements that Google Cloud made on their compute engine, their new instances like your N2 general purpose, or your C2, which is compute optimized, or your M2, which is memory optimized, they're all enabled on Cascade Lake. So they were another first in terms of adopting the Intel technology. There's also a very interesting technology called the Intel Optane DC persistent memory. And just the simplest way to think about it is it's a replacement to DRAMs for half the cost. And it's really a very powerful option if you are considering in-memory database type applications. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So they were the first cloud provider to adopt this technology as well. Another major announcement we made was around Anthos. And I'm sure you heard about Anthos this morning in the keynote as well. And so it's very important for both companies to enable the ecosystem in order to bring those solutions to the marketplace. And so we have a commitment to enable those solutions on Anthos together. And then, of course, Intel does a lot to contribute towards the software code in terms of the open source community. So an example would be TensorFlow, where we've optimized TensorFlow, and we've got about a 60% improvement in terms of latencies for popular workloads. So lots of innovation that we brought to market since announcing the alliance, and there's more to come. So what we've done is, since announcing the alliance, we've spent a lot of time with the Google Cloud team to understand the priorities. And you will hear the Google Cloud team talk about infrastructure modernization. They also talk about smart analytics and AI, as well as application modernization. And so what we've done is, as part of the alliance, we've mapped our solutions to those priorities. And so you're able to take advantage of 5 solution pillars that map into the priorities that Google Cloud has. And so I'll just quickly fly through all 5, and then we can double-click and give you a little bit more detail. So the first is general purpose. Those are the N2 instances, and they are enabled on the Intel Xeon Scalable processor, codename Cascade Lake, which is the 2nd generation. For more compute-intensive workloads, you have the C2 instance. And the reason why it's able to optimize those workloads is because it's running at a 3.9 gigahertz turbo frequency. So it takes advantage of the turbo feature in the CPU. A third solution pillar is memory optimized. So if you're thinking of doing your large in-memory database solutions, your memory optimized solution becomes ideal. And we use the Intel Optane DC persistent memory as an alternative to DRAMs. The fourth solution pillar is around AI and ML. And so Intel is doing a lot of work to drive hardware acceleration. There's a feature called Intel DL Boost, or Deep Learning Boost. And what it does, it allows you to accelerate your AI inference workloads. And so that's a lot of things we are doing, both in terms of hardware and software, to go enable the AI ML solutions. And finally, on hybrid and multi-cloud, we're investing jointly in terms of looking at the Google software stack and making sure that that software stack is optimized on the Intel reference designs. So as you can see, we've got solutions across these priorities. And if you are working in these areas, we're happy to collaborate together and find solutions to your problems. So let me just click into each one to give you a little bit more insights into each of the 5 solution pillars. So the first one was general purpose, which is your N2. For about 80% of your workloads, you can use the N2 instance that's enabled on the 2nd generation Intel Xeon Scalable processor, codename Cascade Lake. What you are typically find is you'll find a 20% better price performance over the older N1 instances. And some of the areas where you can leverage the solution is for databases, web applications, mobile gaming, and as well as development and test environments. Now, this is really the best performance per dollar in terms of the instance that you can get from GCP. And in terms of shapes and options, you have from 2 to 80 vCPUs, as well as 1 to 640 gig. So you get actually a 8 to 1 gig to vCPU ratio. So this is one of the solutions that we offer. But if you're looking to do more compute-intensive workloads, for example, multiplayer gaming, HPC, video encoding, or real-time web serving, you can use the C2 instance. And really, this is the one where you have 40% more performance per vCPU versus your prior gen. So you really have a higher base frequency in the CPU that drives this. And so what you're getting here is the highest performance per core in terms of being able to handle those compute-intensive workloads. And in terms of the shapes and options, you have from 4 to 60 vCPUs, and then 16 to 240 gig in terms of the size of memory. So you get a 4-to-1 ratio between gig per vCPU. In terms of the memory-optimized solutions, there are actually two flavors, right? So one that I'm showing you here is based on DRAMs, and then the other one I'll talk about is based on the Intel Optane DC persistent memory. So if you're looking to do memory-intensive workloads or large in-memory database workloads, or if you have analytics that are sort of in-memory, we find that this is an ideal solution. We're doing a lot of work with SAP HANA, and this is a great solution where you can take advantage of this. What you are able to see is you're getting 3 times more memory capacity versus your older generation M1 instances. So when you're looking for large memory VMs, like 6 terabytes or 12 terabytes, then this is a solution that you can take advantage of. So what you really get is a high gig per core in terms of the solution. And you get up to 29 gigs per vCPU solution here. And this is SAP HANA certified. So again, you can use the current solution, which is DRAM enabled. But let me just kind of talk about the alternative that we have available. So this is the solution where you have an M2 instance that's enabled on the Intel Optane DC persistent memory. So what is that? If you look at the graphic, you have traditional DRAM, and then you have SSD. And if you look at DRAMs, you can only have certain capacity of DRAM because it is expensive. And then for large storage, you have to use SSD, which is typically a warm and then cold tier if you go down to hard disk drives. So Intel has actually come out with this new technology called Intel Optane DC persistent memory. The benefit is that you get DRAM-like performance, but at half the cost of DRAMs. And also, it's much faster than SSD. And then they have lower latency as well. So you're really getting best of both worlds. You get the higher capacity at the lower cost. And so really, that's the benefit over DRAMs. And so when you're looking at the large in-memory databases like SAP HANA, we're seeing that they take advantage of the Optane memory. And I think the important thing which I should mention is the data is persistent. So unlike in DRAM, where you lose your data in DRAM once the power shuts off, because of persistence, your data remains in memory, so your restart times are much faster. And so with regards to SAP HANA, they're about 12 times faster. With regards to Aerospike, it's about 135 times faster. So we're seeing a lot of interest in this. Currently, its beta is coming. So if you have interest to kind of look at in-memory database solutions, this would be a great option to look at. I mentioned earlier about AI and machine learning, and obviously there's a variety of use cases, whether you have image and video recognition, there is recommender system. So if you're on Facebook and you're sort of doing your social media activities, you suddenly get served up a lot of ads based on your preferences. So these are the recommender systems. Then you have natural language processing and analytics. So AI obviously is here for different use cases. What we're seeing is that just from our older generation to our newer generation CPUs, we're seeing a 14x performance per core improvement. And so Intel has done a lot of work to improve the GCP deep learning performance. We do it in 2 ways. We do it through the CPU optimizations, and we also do it through the software optimizations. So in specific, for CPUs, we have something that I mentioned earlier was the Intel Deep Learning Boost, which is really a hardware acceleration. And that allows the AI inference workloads to be accelerated in a much more aggressive fashion, because you have instruction sets that you can actually manage. And we've come up with a new instruction set called VNNI, which is Vector Neural Network Instruction Set. And then, of course, if you compare GPUs versus CPUs, CPUs typically have faster cores, and they also have more memory. So if you're looking at doing inference-related workloads, this is a great solution. In fact, it's a known fact that majority of AI inference today is done on CPUs. We also do a lot of work on terms of software optimizations. So for example, we have the deep learning VMs from GCP with TensorFlow and PyTorch that are pre-installed, and these are optimized for Intel CPUs. Same thing with the deep learning containers, where you have Docker images that have enabled with optimizations on the CPUs as well. So we're doing a lot of work to collaborate on the AI ML side as well in terms of solutions that can help customers. So let me arrive at Anthos. I'm sure you can't leave the conference without hearing more about Anthos. But there was a lot of motivation on Intel's part to collaborate with Google Cloud on Anthos. But just for people that may be unfamiliar with Anthos, think of this as a Google-managed software stack. It is built on open source technology like Kubernetes, Istio, which is microservices and managing of those microservices, as well as Knative. And then you also get a single pane of glass. And essentially what you're doing is, whether you have your workloads on-prem, or if it's in GCP, or if it's even in other clouds, you can all manage that through a single pane of glass. And I guess the vision that they have with Anthos is that you build once, and then you can run anywhere. And so I think it's an amazing solution because that really separates GCP from all the other cloud service providers, because you tend to get boxed into their environment, whereas GCP offers you an open environment. And that's been traditionally the Google mindset, where if you look at Android, if you look at Chrome OS, or now if you look at Anthos, it's always been an open environment. And so Intel believes that you have to give customer choices and not box them in. And so our motivation for the partnership was really to help customers with time to value. And what I mean by that is, if you can deploy faster, if you can shorten your time to revenue, then you really can accelerate the time to value. And then we're also working closely to enable the broader ecosystem. So we work with the OEMs, we work with SIs, we work with ISVs, and we plan to enable the Anthos ecosystem. And of course, we're looking at the total stack, both software and hardware, and make sure that that is optimized so you get the best value in terms of return on investments. So then what is the Anthos solution? Because I get asked that question. So what we're offering is the Intel Select solution that's enabled on Google Cloud's Anthos. So then what is the Intel Select solution? It's really 4 components. One, it's got optimized software. You've got the Intel Silicon. You also have the system configuration and validation. And then you also have open documentation. So those are all the pieces that we kind of put together that form the Intel Select solution. Another way to think about it is that it's like a recipe that you're trying to put together, except that this recipe has been benchmarked and it's been tested. So you're going to get a certain minimum performance guarantee. You also it has been tested for workload optimizations and for TCO. And then also it is verified by Intel. And so that you don't have to do the benchmarking, the testing, the validation. And finally, you have the option of taking on the Intel Select Solutions brand, or you can have your own brand. But you get the reference design from Intel, you marry that with your Anthos stack, and then you have turnkey solutions. So that's what we're bringing to market. And really, think of this as an out-of-the-box for OEMs, SIs, and others that want to take advantage of this solution on Anthos. There's more to come on this. there's a lot of different customers we work with across various segments, whether it's retail, financial services, healthcare, and gaming. We've got a broad set of customers across all of these segments. But just to name a few, we've got the Sony Pictures ImageWorks that does a lot of visualization and computer animation for Sony Pictures. And what they're seeing is a 2x performance on their rendering by using the Intel Xeon Scalable processor. Another example would be Seven Bridges, which is a biomedical data company. And they essentially do research around the genome and processing that pipeline for genome. We're seeing almost a 1.8x improvement as a result of using instances that are powered by Intel. Another company would be Descartes Lab, which actually is a research and analytics company. They're basically taking satellite images of the entire planet, and they try to model forestry and agriculture. And what they found is that their compression rates have improved by almost 38%. So we're really helping customers across different industries based on the tough problems that they have and providing them with solutions. And this is just a small subset of customers here. I just wanted to talk, we work with a lot of different partners, whether it's in different geos, whether they have certain expertise in certain areas, and we also try to partner with a handful of partners that are more strategic. I just wanted to call out one of them. This is Cloud Physics. Essentially, what they offer is a software platform, and the reason I wanted to share this with you was they offer you great insights into your infrastructure. So this Cloud Physics platform sits on VMware vCenter servers or AWS IAM Console, and they are able to glean insights into your infrastructure. And so it allows you to cost model what it would take to run a GCP instance, whether it's on-prem versus in GCP cloud, or if it's in GCP versus another cloud like AWS. And so you're able to cost model and figure out whether you're seeing cost savings. The other thing it allows you to do is price specific instances for any location in GCP. And so what we found is, on an average, by right-sizing your VMs, you could see savings of up to 50%. And this is a great pre-assessment tool. It only takes about 15 minutes, and you get great, amazing insights into your infrastructure. So I would encourage you, if you're unfamiliar with Cloud Physics, to get a sense of their platform, because you can really do it dramatically to save costs and also get a better understanding of your infrastructure. We spent a fair amount of time as we put the alliance together to figure out what is it that customers wanted and how can we really help bring them on board sooner with the benefits that they're looking for. So we've had some customers come to us and ask us, would you be able to give us Google Cloud credits so we can actually test drive the GCP platform? That's something we can help with. If a customer is more serious and they want to do some pilots, we also provide GCP migration funding. So you can actually run a pilot, picking a system integrator along with Google Cloud and Intel. And so we offer GCP migration funding so you can actually test drive a pilot and see whether that's something that it works out for you in terms of cost savings, in terms of performance benefits, in terms of optimizations. The other thing is we offer as part of the alliance is direct access to our best-in-class engineering. And so it saves you a lot of time and effort. Instead of figuring this out yourself, you have the option to work with engineering from Intel and Google Cloud. And then finally, we also give you access to the latest technology. Because a lot of the cutting-edge technology that I described earlier is now being enabled on GCP, you also have the option to get the best price performance for your workloads. So we're happy to collaborate with you if there's interest in terms of at least experimenting with GCP, the platform, or if you want to take it further in terms of driving pilots or actually deploying on GCP. So let me summarize 3 big takeaways. If you're looking to accelerate your deployments, we have a variety of pre-assessment tools. We have GCP credits, and we have GCP migration funding available. I would encourage you to look at the different compute engine instances that Google Cloud has announced, which is the general purpose N2, compute optimized C2, and then memory optimized M2, as well as Anthos solutions that are enabled on the latest 2nd generation Intel Xeon scalable processor. And then, of course, you can talk to the Google Cloud sales team or the Intel sales team to see how you can take advantage of the alliance and also help you in terms of your modernization plans as well as the adoption of hybrid. And then, of course, we've given you the link here. If you are interested, you can go to the link to get more details. But thank you for listening, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.